Welcome to PulsePoint. Today, we're delving into a dark and disturbing chapter of history with the 8 most evil experiments ever conducted on human beings. Viewer discretion is advised, as some of these stories are graphic and unsettling. 1. Unit 731. During World War II, the Imperial Japanese Army conducted extensive chemical and biological warfare research on human test subjects. An estimated 200,000 people died from these cruel experiments. Victims were intentionally exposed to anthrax, the bubonic plague, cholera, syphilis, typhus, and other pathogens. Other experiments included vivisection, controlled dehydration, biological weapons testing, hypobaric pressure chamber testing, organ harvesting amputation, and standard weapons testing, all without anesthesia or a care of whether the victim lived or died. Unit 731 victims included men, women, children, and even infants that were born after victims were RP'd by the staff. Unit 731 was led by General Shiro Ishii, who was granted immunity and then hired after World War II by the United States government. 2. MK Ultra Subproject 68. Subproject 68 experimentation was led by Dr. Donald Cameron on patients admitted to the Royal Victoria Hospital's Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, where he conducted therapy on them, treatment that was life-altering and scarring. Between 1957 and 1964, Cameron administered electroconvulsive therapy as frequently as twice daily, as opposed to the recommended limit of 3 times a week. He would put patients into drug-induced comas and play back tapes of simple statements or repetitive noises over and over again. The victims often lost the ability to speak, forgot about their parents, and suffered serious amnesia. All of this was performed on Canadian citizens because the CIA wasn't willing to risk such operations on Americans. To ensure continuous funding, Cameron experimented upon admitted children, and in one situation filmed a child engaging in intimate acts with high-ranking government officials, which he used as blackmail. 3. Tuskegee Syphilis Study. In the 1930s, researchers from the U.S. Public Health Service and Alabama's Tuskegee Institute recruited nearly 400 black men of low socioeconomic status to study the natural progression of syphilis. The initial study comprised 399 infected patients and 201 without the disease. They were told they were simply being treated for bad blood, which colloquially at the time referred to anything from STDs to anemia to fatigue. Many of the men did not even know they had syphilis. Penicillin became the gold standard for syphilis treatment by 1943, but researchers never offered it to the men in the Tuskegee study, instead letting them continue to suffer. The study continued for nearly 30 more years. More than 100 of the subjects died from syphilis directly or from complications from not being properly treated. The patients filed a lawsuit and eventually shared a $9 million settlement. In May 1997, then-President Bill Clinton issued a formal apology, which included the passage, "I am sorry that your federal government orchestrated a study so clearly racist. That can never be allowed to happen again." 4. The Chimera. The Chimera, which means the cell, in Russian, was testing done by the Soviet on humans to find a tasteless, odorless chemical that could not be detected in the body after death. Lethal poisons were tested on prisoners, including mustard gas, ricin, curare, cyanide, and digitoxin. Soviet and Russian leaders have used what was learned during the Chimera experiments, as is obvious from their long list of prominent figures and politicians assassinated by poisoning. 5. Nazi experimentation. During World War II, Nazi Germany performed extensive experimentation on prisoners at concentration camps. Victims were abused, mutilated, starved, tortured, and experimented on. There are 15,754 documented victims. About a quarter of them died, and many that survived were later killed. Types of experimentation included hypothermia testing, bone and muscle transplants, blood coagulation tests, and seawater experiments. Twins and homosexuals were also singled out and tested on extensively. 6. Pit of Despair. In the 1970s, while working at the University of Wisconsin, psychologist Harry Harlow did experiments on monkeys with the intent of researching depression in animals. Harlow built isolation chambers and would isolate monkeys who had just bonded with their mother into the chamber for extended periods of time. Upon release, babies they were found to be extremely depressed and often unresponsive when let out. 7. Project 4.1. Between 1946 and 1958, the United States tested 67 nuclear weapons above ground on or near Bikini and Eniwetok atolls in the Marshall Islands. Entire islands were vaporized and populated islands were blanketed with fallout. Marshall Island residents were exposed to high levels of radiation without their consent or knowledge of the effects, particularly after the Castle Bravo test, the most powerful nuclear test ever done by the U.S. Instead of warning them of the dangers, the U.S. government observed the effects of the radiation on the Marshallese. These experiments serve as a grim reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the importance of ethical standards in research. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more historical deep dives. Thank you for watching, and stay informed.